The following is an hour-long conversation with author Patricia Springer, who wrote Flesh and Blood, the book about Darlie Routier and her guilt. Patricia was able to sit in the courtroom every day of trial and speak to some of the investigators, especially James Cron, and she sat down with me and gave me an hour of her time. Enjoy.
Hello.
Hi, Patricia. This is Brian. all that
Hi.
all that texting does get to you after a bit.
Yeah, it does.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to do this, and I know that it's been a long time. And this is basically, for the groups that support the conviction of Darlie. And we know that your book is very detailed, so we know that you studied the transcripts and all the medical records and stuff that you could get a hold of. And we just wanted some insights from you as to how you felt when you wrote the book, what led you to the case, things like that, because you actually studied it. And through reading your book, I've been doing this for years, and through reading your book, it seems like you know more about the case than I do. I might know a little bit of the
If you had sat through the trial and talked to all the investigators that I talked to, you'd know just as much as I do.
Well, see, I've talked to some of the investigators. I spoke with David Neighbors. I got emails from James Cron. Unfortunately, he died a few years ago, and he wouldn't
I
talk.
know.
He wouldn't
That
talk.
was sad.
Yeah, he wouldn't talk about the case. I've messaged back and forth with Greg Davis, but unfortunately, he wouldn't talk about the case. But he's been on so many different shows. I was like, well,
Right.
how come you can't talk about the case with me? But
Well, he kind of got into a pickle
yeah,
personally. So,
and yeah, well, and yeah, I understand that in McKinney, Texas, as a
yeah.
DA, he was brought up. They charged him, but they didn't exactly indict him. He did get in
Right.
the pickle, and there's been a lot of people that I've reached out to about the case that will talk to me, but they don't want me to present it. And when they don't want me to present it, I simply can't. I won't do it. I'll say that
Right.
I talked to this person, but I can't put it out there, and that's not fair. In your case, uh, we feel like your book is so detailed, and we just wanted, what led you to the case? What was it that led you to it? I know it was your second book, wasn't it?
It was my second book, and I was looking for a case to cover. And I happened to be sitting watching the evening news one night, and there's Darlie Routier shooting silly string on her son's grave. And I just sat up immediately and went, "What the hey?" Uh,
Yeah.
and uh, and then, of course, they indicted her or arrested her right after that. And so it struck me as the kind of case that would be a good one to research and write about. I immediately contacted my editor in New York and told him about the case, and he said, "Send me a one-page synopsis." I did, and 2 days later I had a contract. So I mean, that's how it all just happened. I was looking for a case, and that one fell in my lap.
It's still controversial to this day. The Innocence Project of New York has picked her case up, and she's not looking to be released on evidence. She's looking to be released on, did she get a fair trial? Uh, I've read all the transcripts, and and I don't see anything in that didn't give her a fair trial. I know that Doug Mulder, her lawyer, he had to kind of rush it a little bit, and the whole thing lasted like 8 months. Now, did you sit in the trial, or did you go with the trial?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was there every day.
Right.
Um,
So you were there,
uh,
but so was Barb Davis, she says.
right. She was there, and so was, oh God, what was his name? Davis, not Davis. What was his name? There's a guy that wrote a book too, and he was there too. There were three of us.
Was it?
And
Okay, I'll listen to you.
oh no, no, I just can't remember his name. But as far as them saying that she did get a fair trial, I'll say this: I've sat through a lot of trials
Hmm.
over the years, and I've never seen a judge that had his own attorney there who was an appellate attorney. And if he ever had a question, he turned to her, and they looked in the law books, and he was going to make sure that that was not overturned. So I don't know what they're going to base that on.
There was a lot of times that he, like when Helena Kasabian came in, she was the housekeeper,
Uh huh.
and a lot of that he didn't even let the jury hear what she was saying about Drake, the baby, when she had him wrapped up in the blanket.
Right.
Yeah, and he didn't even let him hear that. I read it all, and I felt like all his overrulings and and substantial. I felt like it was more for Darlie. He did
I mean, he really ran a tight ship, and I just don't think that there's, because he had someone advising him on top of his own knowledge,
right.
and he was an excellent judge, uh, superior reputation. Then I just he was afraid that that was going to happen, that somehow that they were going to come back at him in an appeal, that just what they're trying to do now. I just can't see it. I mean,
Yeah, we know it's not going to go that way. She's got J. Stephen Cooper now, and his job is to keep her alive. I do know that
right.
Judge Toll. They tried a lot of the supporters out there. They use this. They say, "Well, he had Alzheimer's." And he didn't have Alzheimer's during that trial. He had it
No,
in 2003. He stepped down.
my mother had died from Alzheimer's, and I can tell you, he did not have it.
No, no. But he did step down in 2003 because he was showing signs of it. So he did the right thing, you know. And
Right.
I read an article that he was speaking to us that his wife wrote, and she wanted him, can you tell me if Darlie's guilty or not? And he said, that's not what I'm there for. I'm there to be sure to watch the prosecutors and watch the defense and be sure she gets a fair trial, just like you said.
Exactly.
All right. And
Uh,
okay.
above and beyond, as far as I was concerned.
I was talking to one of the jurors yesterday, Rena Way. She was on the Lisa Gibbons show. I don't know if you saw it. I don't know. You may not have followed it after that.
I don't think so.
Did she was talking about
I mean,
when?
I was trying to think if I was. Evidently, I wasn't,
No, you
uh,
weren't. Barb Davis
because
was on.
I've been on her show a couple of times for other cases.
Right.
Um, but no, I didn't see it.
Yeah, Barb Davis went on that show, and after she wrote Precious Angels, she went on that show, and she was dead set on Darlie's guilt, and she was talking about the lie detector test that Darlie took and failed. And
Right.
she was going, she failed it. I know she failed it. I know the question she asked. And Darren's mother, Cerilda, turned to her and said, "We're going to sue you for this." Right on that show. And then
Hmm.
on the next segment, Bart Davis believed that Darlie was innocent. Um,
Well, I think I told you how that transpired.
uh,
Uh, she was approached. We both were, because I was too approached, and I can't remember who approached me. It wasn't one of the family directly, but someone that was in their camp.
Chris
Um,
Brown.
oh, I don't like Chris Brown. He
Okay, so
wrote
this
ugly things about me.
okay.
Uh, but and it's funny, his son installed my cable television
Uh,
not long after that. But anyway, um, what were we saying?
well, Barb said that she had
Oh,
it. She yeah.
that they came and they said we will get, because I had asked for an interview from Darlie. I'd written her, asked her for an interview, and they said, "We know you've asked for an interview. We will see that you get an exclusive if you will say that she's innocent. If you will look at the evidence and turn, you're around." And I said, "No, I can't do that."
Right. Right.
And Barbara ruined any chance she ever had of writing another book, as far as I was concerned,
Well,
by doing that, because she just came right out and said whatever she wrote was a lie.
but she's like, I'll give you an example. She's one of the things that Barb said was that she didn't get to see the pictures of the bruising on her arms, that nobody saw it. But all of us that have read her book know that she writes about it, and she's even got a picture of her bruises on the
She
arm.
was there taking taking pictures the same time I was. We went to the court reporter's house in Dallas, and we took the pictures from the pictures that were presented.
Yeah, I really think that she was threatened with a lawsuit, and she did promise to. She promised. She came out and she said, "Well, I promised to write a book that shows her as innocent," and she never did. She,
No,
you know,
well,
she never did. Uh, Shortly after she met that family, though, you know about her son Troy. He was shot.
right,
He was shot and killed
yeah,
by the police, and so she probably had a
right.
bad taste in her mouth for police after
You
that.
know how that happened. He was growing marijuana in their house.
Yeah, they caught her with it, and they also
Yeah.
caught her with that drug GHB,
Mhm.
and she was convicted of that. And
Right.
but she came on the shows afterwards saying that she never saw those pictures, but she never really gave a reason as to why she changed her mind. Not really. She kind of
Well,
talked.
I can guarantee you she saw the pictures.
Oh, we know she did because well, there was another one. I think the last defense that she came out. She said the pictures were there. They were mixed in with 1,000 other things, and the jury just wasn't going to look at that. Now she wasn't in the jury room, so she doesn't know what they were going to look at.
Right.
It was nice to be able to speak to one of the jurors, one of the most outspoken jurors yesterday, because she told me they saw all the pictures and it was discussed everything. She said it was all there.
Right.
There was the one juror, Charles Sanford, that he came back years later and wrote an affidavit saying that if he would have seen the graveside, the surveillance, the videotape, the surveillance. You remember when Jimmy Patterson, the police detective, took the fifth,
Right. Right.
right? And he said if he would have saw that, all that, then he probably would have not voted for guilty. But the thing of it is, since you were there, you'll know that Doug Mulder tried to get him to wanted him up there just to plead the fifth, so he could cast doubt.
Right.
And Greg Davis said, "Well, if you want to put the tape in, then put it in." And Doug Mulder declined to put that tape in because it doesn't really show a grieving, falling down, out of control Darlie like they tried to say it meant.
Right.
And so that's what that was about. Now, Rena was also telling me that when Darlie was on the stand, there was a moment there that they sent the jury out, and when they came back in, Darlie was bawling. She was crying, and she said Rena said she reached over and gave her a tissue to cry with because she felt sorry for her. Did you do?
Why? You know why she was crying?
I think her
Mulder
lawyer.
chewed her out.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Rena said because Mulder chewed her out. There was a minute there before when she got on the stand, they had to send the jury out so she could use the bathroom, according to testimony. But yeah, we think Mulder chewed her out because she shouldn't have got up on that stand, and the jurors had a big picture of Devin and Damon put in front of her because they wanted to see
Right.
if they can get some kind of reaction. And I asked Rena about this. I said, "Is that true? You guys did that?" And she said, "Yeah, we wanted to see if they got no reaction from her, none at
The
all."
only time she cried was, and this came from a person who was in the courtroom who had gone up to the railing to ask a question, and I can't remember whether it was a reporter or exactly who it was, but I mean I spoke to him personally, and he came back and was kind of chuckling, and he said, "Well, Mulder just reamed his client out," and I said, "What do you mean?" And he said he told her he wanted to see some goddamn tears because she was on trial for her life.
Wouldn't
And
doubt it.
that's when she burst out crying.
I wouldn't doubt it. And when Toby Shook was going at her on cross, and I spoke to him too. He's a great guy. When
Uh, he is.
he's a younger guy. When I when I
Yes.
when he had her on cross, he was talking about some letters that he had confiscated uh, from her jail, writing back and forth. And in the letter, she named Glenn Mize and Gary Austin. She said, "I know who did this. I know who did this." And Darlie's response to that, how'd you get those letters? Isn't that illegal? And that's when the courtroom, according to people that had been there, started to kind of laugh at her a little bit. Do you remember?
Right.
Do you remember that? They they they
Yeah.
they brought. She was describing. She said it was Glenn Mize, and they brought, I believe, Glenn Mize into the courtroom, and he did not fit her description at all. do you recall that?
I don't remember that, but
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly that. I mean, I know, I'm sure it happened because you said it did, but I don't recall it.
It's been a long time. I know it's been a long time. Now another.
Well, and I mean, I know that she was saying other people did it, and, had named some, but I see, it wasn't to be significant enough to remember.
Right. Her story had changed several different times. In her first written statement to the police, that it was a June 8th statement, she wrote that her and Darren talked about things. She did say we had words, but they ended up, he gave me a kiss goodnight and everything. And then in 2002, Darren writes this affidavit up for the courts. It says, me and my wife had a verbal argument that night, and she asked me for a separation. He was trying to cast doubt for her. And so that means that they, if that's true, if she asked him for a separation that night, that's the reason why they left it out. Because if you're having a marital argument and then 2 hours later your children come up dead, they're going to know that there's no intruder. And to this day,
Well,
yeah,
no, I know that the police that I talked to, um, said that that and they speculated on what the argument was about, and but yeah, that he had said no, he wasn't going to give her. They said divorce, not separation, and that she had decided, okay, I'll leave you with nothing, and that includes your two kids.
right. And I don't know if she was actually trying to commit suicide that night and just missed her carotid
No, no,
artery.
no, no.
I mean, I don't know because
Well, maybe Crum said that, like there was a hesitation wound, on her shoulder, and he says because God, it hurt, and she just didn't go deep enough. And one of the medical people said that if it had not been for the trauma of her children dying, that they would never have taken her into surgery. They would have just stitched her up in the ER.
absolutely, that was Dr. Alexandro Santos that said that. And what they are trying to say, what they said on the last, well, Susan Sarandon did a spot, and she played, Helen Prejean. And Susan Sarandon's exact words were, the necklace was so deeply embedded into her wound that they had to surgically remove it. And we know better than that. We know that they took it off.
No, that's not right.
No, they took it off. Even Darlie Roach, they took it off before she went in there.
Yeah,
And Santos said that the only reason he put her in an ICU room is because he didn't know if she knew the other boy was dead, and the media was there, and he just wanted to give her a chance to rest. She wasn't an ICU patient. So, and he did say, you're absolutely right. He did say that if it wasn't for all the trauma, then he would have stitched her up and sent her home.
yeah,
Yep. And
and
yeah,
I mean that tells you right there that her wounds weren't life threatening like they all claim.
no. As a matter of fact, right now, her youngest sister, Danelle, has taken to the platform TikTok, and because she's older now. She was a 13-year-old. You might have never seen her or never met her in that
Oh
courtroom.
yeah, no, she was there.
But
They
she
all were there.
she is trying to well, she wants to she's a nurse now. And
Oh,
she was trying to tell me what the word superficial means. And I said, well, it means a minor cut, not a deep wound. That's what it means. And she goes, no, 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 that's not what it means. It's directional. It means it's directional. It like the aorta is superficial to the vagus valve. And I'm like, no, Danelle, that's not what it means, and that's not what they meant. Even Patrick Dilwan said on the stand when they were talking about the word superficial, he said, no, it means a minor wound. They weren't concerned with it. She she
no,
she also said that she came on 2020, and she said that Darlie lost 50% of her blood, and that's why they put her in.
that's a lie too.
We know that's a lie. And I do have some empathy for her because she was 13 years old and she was brought up in this, your sister didn't do it, and here's why. But to come out, for me, to come out and publicly tell lie after lie after lie, it's disrespectful to Devin and Damon, to me personally, for me, and a lot of us feel that way. So
Mhm.
she did come on my show. She said, "Oh," she said, "All right, we'll do it live. Fire it up live. We'll do it." I said, Danielle, I said, I'm no holds barred." And she said, "I got this. I got." And she came up on there, and it was a 4 hours long, and I got her with this one. Darlie said that her father began to sexually assault her and molest her stepfather. Began to molest her from age 8 on. Do you remember that when she said that on the stand? Well, Danelle said he didn't do that. He never did that. He's not a molester. He's not a molester. I said, well, either you're lying or Darlie lied on that stand. She said he absolutely did not do that. She said, I don't know why you would even bring that up. I said, well, to this day, Dennis Stahl is still friends with her mother. So that tells me that your family will protect and not call the law on someone who has harmed a child. And she rage. That's when she basically rage quit on me.
I believe it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
what?
I believe that she raged.
Oh, yeah, she did. Oh, she cursed me out. And she's just like her mother. And it was to the point where I couldn't
Yeah,
handle. I don't like
she
being
did.
talked. Yeah, but that's what the reason now that I'm kind of reaching out to people that were in the know, that I wish I could. I wish I would have been able to speak to James Cron. You know, she said that James Cron's not even a CSI; he's just a consultant. So I had to go back and get all of his decorations where he was the commander of CSI, the Dallas Sheriff's Department. He started out as a turnkey in 1963. He was under Henry Wade. That's the only thing. That's the only thing that I have against him. He because we know Henry Wade was not the most up and up prosecutor. Yeah,
Right.
and they say that that courtroom was packed to the hilt, and it was hard to get in and out of there. Barb Davis said, "I didn't even go to the bathroom because you lose your seat."
Well, and that's true. And I know that on the day that we thought the jury was going to come back, and that they did come back, that I mean, I got there at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I wasn't the first one in line.
Right. You know, they that she Darla Key got into it with the assistant prosecutor Norman Kine right outside the courtroom there, and he was giving an interview, and he was saying, "Well, we know there's no intruder. It leads to no intruder." And she stepped into his interview and said, "That's a lie. You know it." And Norm says, "Do I have to interview in front of this trailer trash right here?" I mean,
Yeah.
they got in a big argument, and he had to publicly apologize for that. I know that they were staying at the Inn in the Hills in Kerrville. Uh, they tried to say that the reason they had the motion to place it at the motion to move it was because that judge was looking at property in the Kerrville area, but we know that that
And
was it.
Mulder's the one that asked for the change of venue,
Right,
and it
Mulder.
was granted. And then the judge gets to pick. And yes, he had family there, and that's why he wanted to go there.
Well, maybe he could stay with family. That I mean, we also know that Houston wasn't available, San Antonio wasn't available. We know that, and they were saying that if you want somebody to be found guilty, send them to Kerrville. Well, you can't send them to Kerrville with shoddy evidence against them because they do find people innocent up there, and they blamed it on the jurors being uneducated. Danelle says anybody that believes Darlie is innocent is uneducated. That's what she says, and that's why
Yeah.
I'm digging deeper into this case because of some of the things that she's saying. Yeah, it's like how do you disrespect your nephews that way by telling what you know is a lie? As far as that sock, do you remember the big to do about
Oh
this?
yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, so down this alley, 75 yards, there was a sock found with Devin and Damon's blood on it. And on the inside toe, we had Darlie's DNA. They never said if it was skin cells or saliva. They just said her DNA was on the inside of that sock. Do you recall that?
No.
You don't remember okay, all right. If you don't remember it, you just don't remember it. But they did have
No,
her.
I mean I remember the sock, and I remember the blood, and they said it looked like it had been dipped in blood, not splattered or anything, because it was a circular like
Yeah,
nickel
little
size,
drops. Hmm.
but I don't remember the DNA comment.
Well, trust me, it's there, and they did say that it was in on the inside toe of that sock. And so Danelle goes on this show, Unsolved No More, with Detective Ken Maines. You may know who he is. Uh,
No,
well, she said she lied and said that the DNA was found on the outside of the sock, and because she feels like somebody gagged Darlie, and I don't know how Darlie can be getting gagged with a sock, stabbed with a knife, being held down, have all those bruises put on her arms, all in one fell swoop.
her bloody footprint all over the kitchen floor.
Yeah, and her bloody footprints were only coming away from the sink. They weren't going to the sink,
Mm-mm.
if you recall that. And she didn't. They neither one of them mentioned anything about her wetting towels, which is you don't wet towels if you're trying to stop bleeding,
Right.
until they came back and saw that they took the sink. That's when she changed her story, and now all of a sudden she was getting towels. And Darren lied when he said that Darlie was down trying to help him give CPR to the boys because the police said she was just standing there and she wasn't
Right.
tending to the boys at all. They call Officer Waddell, Dave Waddell. They say that when Waddell pulled up, that's when the intruder went out the door and went right past him. That's what they're saying now. But I was able to speak with Gorsuch, the guy that lived. I talked to his wife, the guy that lived across the way, and he saw Waddell pull up, and Darren was already out in the yard, and Waddell drew his gun on Darren and brought him back into the house. But they're really trying to say that that intruder could have got out that front door and not be seen. Do you realize? Are you aware of Darren's affidavit about he asked people to break into his home?
No, I
Y-
don't.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, because they didn't mention it at trial. They couldn't have. He didn't do it until 2002, but he put an affidavit out and he filed it with the courts around appeal time, and where he said he asked multiple people to break into his home, steal all of his valuables, go hide it somewhere, and he would pay them later. But he never names any of these people that he asked. None of them. So we know that that was just a lie for the appeals.
Sure.
So you didn't personally get to speak to any of the family or any of the friends of.
No, they didn't like me. They wouldn't talk to me.
You didn't speak. Did you speak to any of the residents of Rowlett?
No.
No. You said,
Like in the neighbors and stuff like that. No.
yeah. See, because
I
your
spent
book.
probably more than 100 hours talking to detectives. And Kron and I became good friends. And in fact, it's funny. Well, never mind. I won't say that. But I went to his Halloween party, and I went dressed as Darlie Routier. But anyhow, uh, it uh, it tickled Kron, but Kron. But I went to the people that were working the scene
Right.
and had the most to say about her demeanor, his demeanor, just how things were going down at that particular time.
One of the things that Danelle says about James Cron is that he didn't even know which couch Darlie was lying on to say that there was no blood there because there were two leather couches there. But
Right.
I mean, come on. One of the
Well,
funny one of the funny things he said about an intruder is he said, "Well, there couldn't have been an intruder unless it was Tinkerbell that slid down the chimney or something like that because there's no evidence of an intruder at all." And they say that he blamed Darlie within 20 minutes of being at the scene. No, he didn't. He said
no.
he felt like it was an inside job with about 30 minutes of being there. And here's a man who's been at 23,000 crime scenes. 4,300 of them had bodies. Rowlett knew that they had to call somebody. And he teaches. He was teaching CSI. And Danelle's
Mm-hmm.
like he's not even a crime scene investigator. Not even he's like the crime scene investigator from Texas. He was a really nice guy. I emailed it.
Grasp at any straw that they can, and I just can't see that. I don't care if the Innocence Project have taken other people and not got them out, and I just don't see that that's going to help her because the woman's guilty. I think it's horrible that she has allowed her family to go through all this. As much as the Routiers don't, not the Routiers, but the Darlie Key and them don't like me, I feel sorry for them because they've bought into this farce that Darlie has portrayed this whole thing. And
Darlie Key absolutely hates my guts. One thing that they don't like is because I stuck up for Darlie. I believe that at that time of that affidavit is around when I saw the case, and I honestly believe that Darren led some people into that house. And I had some non-supporters that are still my friends today. They're like, "No, you got to look at this evidence. You got to look at just read it. We're not trying to convince you. We just want you to see it for yourself." And I didn't even want to read it. But I was talking to Darlie Key on Facebook one day, and I noticed that Darren had put up a Facebook page. And I was telling Mama Darlie, I said, he's got this Facebook page up there, and he's not sticking up for her innocence. He's not mentioning his boys or nothing. And she said, well, hold on, let me go over and look. And she went over and looked at it, and she come back to my private message with me, and she was really pissed at him about it. And she was going, I always believed that Darren had something to do with this. And she told me that in a private message. And so when we were in the support groups on Facebook and we were talking about why we feel like she's innocent, and I was like, well, I honestly feel like Darren had something to do with it. And they all started jumping my tail because back then you didn't blame Darren. Now they blame him all. Now they're all blaming him. But back then you weren't allowed to blame him. And I said, hold on now. I said, I'm not the only one that feels that way. I said, even Darlie Key feels that way. And Darlie Key popped in the group. And she said, I absolutely do not. We love Darren and blah, blah. So I took that private message and I put it in the groups. I said, yes, you did say that. And you're not going to sit here and lie to me and insult my intelligence. So, anyways, I left support. And I wasn't going to have anything else to do with that case at all because she lied to me. I wasn't. They started attacking me. And Darlie Key said publicly that fingerprint that was left on the table, 85J, that they can't identify, she said, that's your fingerprint. And I want your finger because she knows I've been to the house. I want your fingerprint. And I said, oh, I said, okay. So that's one reason why I really started digging in this case because she did that publicly. Otherwise, I was just going to leave it alone. And to this day, whenever they lie about something, I catch them. And with the help of the group, we catch them. There was a show where Darlie Key said, that doctor came and told me, I remember he held my hand and he said, if that knife would have went 1 centimeter more, it would have cut her carotid artery and she'd be dead. But we know it was 2 centimeters or 2 millimeters. I don't know why she tells those little lies like that. I just don't know.
not smart.
Yeah. The Innocence Project of New York has had her case for 4 years. And just 2 weeks ago, Danelle was on her TikTok going, hey, I need the public's help. If you have any leads, anything that you know about people of Rowlett, anything, call the Innocence Project. Call them, let them know. So that tells me that they don't have anything. That one thing,
They can't.
no, I don't.
It's a pretty dry case. I mean, all the questions were answered. I mean, they even answered the question of, I mean, they don't believe that Darren had anything to do with it. They think he helped cover it up,
Yes,
but they don't think he helped kill the children.
I think he helped covered it up, and we kind of feel like some fibers from that sock that was down the alley were found in his Reeboks that were sitting there by the door. We kind of wonder if he ran that sock down the alley because Darlie had it over her hand. That's why she was so worried about the knife. She had it over her hand, and when the sock got, she had to take it off. We think she attacked Damon twice, the youngest. We think that she came
Yeah,
back. Hmm.
because there were two huge blood spots. She hit him in the family room, and then he was crawling towards the front door, and she got it again.
Right, that's what we think, and we think that she didn't have that sock on her hand, and that's why she was going. Well, there's a knife right there. They tried to say that the only reason she mentioned a knife is because the 911 operator brought it up, but that's not true. She kept on mentioning that knife, and she mentioned it again at the hospital because I've been able to speak with like Jody Fitz and Christopher Weigoltz and Jody Cotner, some of the nurses there, and she kept mentioning that knife. She kept on. There was a spot on the back of her nightshirt that was a perfect imprint of the knife, as if she had it behind her back.
Right.
That's what makes me think that she had chased Damon around, and that Damon was trying to get upstairs to his dad. That's what we think. And I've had other people tell me, people who looked at the case, they feel like as soon as Darren came down them stairs, he knew exactly what she was doing and what she did. Because if you listen to that 911 call, you can hear her saying, "I didn't do anything, Darren." And then she changes her tone really quick. She goes, "Somebody who intentionally came in here and did it, Darren." And then she went on to, "There's nothing touched." She was snapping at him during that 911 call. And I had to study it over and over and over and over again. And people say, "Well, that 911 call, she was hysterical." She knows it's being recorded. And there was also a big issue about that wine glass that got broke and how she had no cuts on the bottom of her feet. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, she had no cuts. And she was trying to say that she went back and forth to that sink about 7 times, and the only footprints are leading away from the sink. And the two key clues in the case to me is all that blood at the sink and the lack of blood on the couch. If she were to had her throat slit there, you would see more blood there. And they came up with no appreciable blood on it. So you're writing other books right now too, huh?
Yeah, I've got one that's complete that I want to do one final edit, and then I've got one that I lack one chapter on, and then a final edit on that one, and then I'm going to republish an, another book that I had written. In fact, the next one after Darlie's book. No, it wasn't right after Darlie's book. It was a couple past that. A case out of Tennessee that I'm. There are more things that have happened since that case
Yeah. So,
came up.
so
So,
you have to.
well, she was the youngest woman on death row for a long time. She was convicted when she was 18
Yeah.
and committed the crime when she was 17. But she has since she's been on death row in Tennessee. She's pulled an attempted murder case there in prison.
Wow. So
Yeah, she's
you really have to be into true crime to sit down and write a book about it. I do things the other way. I mean, I wish I could. I wish I had the patience to do that, to write a book about something. And my passion is more for the victims and social media on it. Now you remember Carla Faye Tucker? You remember that name?
oh yeah,
Darlie and Carla Faye were great friends. They executed her in 1998. The pickaxe lady, and she's doing
yeah.
this. Darlie's doing this interview about, and somebody asked her, "Well, how's it feel? You got so close to her, and then she's gone." And then Darlie started crying, real tears. I mean, they were wet. But when you see her in interviews talking about Devin and Damon, she does not do that. She simply does
No,
not do that.
she doesn't feel bad about it.
She looked at that grave site on KXAX where she's spraying that silly string. She looked like she was relieved to me. She just looked like
Oh,
she,
I think she was. I think she was. Um, I think she was tired of being a mom. She wanted to party.
yeah. And even in her diary, she said, "I feel like there's too much responsibility on me now. I'd like to do things again like when I was young." I mean, that was it. Something to that effect was in her diary. And that's
Right.
another thing that kind of leads me towards something was going to be explosive in that house was her last diary entry. Devin, Damon, and Drake, forgive me for what I'm about to do. I
Right.
don't I don't want you to look at me and see a miserable person every time you see me. So I was at first, even though I wondered, was she trying to kill herself and the boys and leave Darren with nothing, and she just missed that vein. But
No, I don't think so. I mean, personally, I don't think so. I think that she tried to cut her throat because that was always her badge of honor. That was always her. Look at what happened to me. She's such a narcissist,
Right.
and it that way everybody will always feel sorry for her because she was also almost killed.
Yeah,
And
these two detectives came in and they did a show called The Wrong Man, and they set her down and they were drilling her. I mean, you killed her. They were going at her, and she said that detective told her, "You haven't cried a single tear since you've sat here, Darlie." And she goes, "You don't know the kinds of tears that I cry when I'm by myself." But
she's
and
she's been having a high old time in the last 25 years, 30.
right,
That
she files grievance after grievance after grievance in that prison. Uh, there was Rena even said, and I've talked to other people who have said that when she was in the courtroom, she was kind of looking somber, but when they were picking her up to go out, she was like, "Hey, what's going on?" She was all cheery and stuff. And even
oh
at
yeah, I got a picture of her looking out the window. This was after she was convicted, looking out the window of the car and smiling at everybody.
yeah, yeah. Let me see. I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
I do that.
Well, you really know as much or more about the case than I do.
Well, not from your book. I mean, you're really detailed in it. And I know that you're writing it to sell a really good story. But I'm looking at your book, and I'm learning a little bit of stuff. Like when they brought him back to the Darlie and Darren back to the Rowlett Police Department after they had questioned him. They were bringing him over towards the funeral, and you wrote something about the conversation they had there. And I was like, okay, I didn't know how you got that, but it seems about right. Where she got mad at Darren for talking. Oh, Darren said, I gave him the keys to the house, to the boat, to the shop. And she was kind of mad at him for, she's like, don't talk to them. Don't tell them nothing. That's another reason why I think that when he started talking about that killer in that graveside interview, that she walked away because I don't think she wanted to be questioned about it on the news. Joe Munoz followed that case for KXAX. And also Robert Riggs covered it. You know who he is, don't you?
Yeah, Joe and Joe's a great guy. We became friends, and he he didn't like Darlie very much.
Yeah, and you couldn't tell it from the way he reported it. See, I
Oh
go,
no, he's a
yeah,
good reporter.
yeah. I sometimes I go into the UNT digital library and I pick up clips, and most of them are Joe. But you could hear him giggling after after one of them. He did a clip and it was still recording. And he was giggling about it. And he's another one that I've looked for, but I don't know if he's still doing journalism. But Robert Riggs, do you know who Robert Riggs is?
The name's familiar, but I don't remember.
Yeah, he's the one that covered Darlie's lie detector test, and he had Mama Darlie sitting out there, and he already knew
Okay.
that he already knew that she took the test, and he asked Mama Darlie, "Well, did she take a lie detector test?" And Mama Darlie said, "Nope, no, she didn't." And then he busted her out with he busted out with the well, how come you were seen, 30 minutes after the test, crying and held on to her? Darlie tells us that that test was inconclusive. It was inconclusive. And protocol for a polygraph is if you get an inconclusive test, is you retake that test. And she never has. Darren took a polygraph test too. This is I don't know if you know about it, but
Yeah.
the Texas millionaire Brian Pardo, and they asked him 4 questions on that test. They gave it to him 3 times and he failed it. It's like, did you stab your wife? Do you know the name of the person who stabbed your wife? And there were 2 more. But he failed on all of it, and they gave him that test 3 times. And the people were saying, "Well, look at Darren. He failed that test." I think he failed that test because in his head, he knows that Darling did it, and they
No, they. You're right.
still have another baby to raise, Drake. And I had Cyrilda on, and Cyrilda, Darren's mom, she swore up and down that Darren, Darren didn't do anything, that Darlie didn't do anything. There was an intruder, but she tripped up and told me, she said, Darlie is a very, very light sleeper. And the reason that she was, the reason we know the reason that she was down there is because the baby would move around in his crib and wake her up, right? They talked about that in court. And if the baby would wake you up moving in his crib, how come an attack on your two kids didn't wake you up? And I think the jury bought into that too.
Oh, well, and when you say that somebody comes in and is going to rob you or rape you or whatever they're going to do, they don't kill the kids. That's their leverage.
Right, and that's the FBI profiler that said on the stand. His name was Alan Brantley. He said they would use them for leverage. You do this, and they'll be okay. And then another thing that was odd to me, even as a supporter, I always wondered this: why that intruder didn't speak a word to Darlie, didn't say nothing to her, nothing. They're usually given some kind of command. They usually want something. And people say, well, he came in that backyard and he looked in them sliding glass doors and saw Darlie laying there, blah, blah, blah. So he decided he was going to come in there and sexually assault her, right? But if you walk up that back of the house and you were to go to them doors, the motion detector lights would come on. That's how we know that nobody went back out the screen,
Right.
because the motion detector lights came on 18 minutes. And when Cron, as a matter of fact, when Cron went to the screen, he noticed that the screen was facing inwards. The cut was facing inwards still, not outwards.
Right.
And they really they try to trash Cron so badly, and he's just the
Oh,
nicest guy.
but to James's credit, he used to laugh about it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they're on the Rowlett Police site, which on Facebook. I follow them because Jimmy Patterson and Dave Neighbors and Dean Poos and all them. Well, Jimmy Patterson got voted in for just last year. He got voted as Officer of the Year, and one of the other officers commented, "Who voted for that?" Just joking at Jimmy Patterson, and I commented under there, "Darlie Routier." Got a whole bunch of a whole bunch of smiles and stuff. Because they tried to blame his son Chad on.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Chad is one of the ones. Chadwick Patterson is one of the ones that they were blaming for the longest time, because he did get involved in some other stuff. But I reached him one time and I said, "Well, do you want to talk to me just like I did you? Do you want to talk to me?" And I'm going to present it. And he said, "Sure, sure." But when it came time to talk to me, his girlfriend said, "Nope, he don't want to talk to you no more." I was like, "Man," because I know that he actually tried to help. He was saying, "Look, my dad's not following up on certain leads." He tried to help. Uh, but they've tried to blame it on everybody but Darlie. And
Oh, sure.
like my goal is, even in contacting you, which I'm so glad you took the time to speak to me, is because you did sit at the trial and you did see some things, and there's some insights that you got there through your book. I'm gonna be sure, and I don't know if you're still profiting off of Flesh and Blood, but I'm gonna push it more, and I'll push some of
No,
your push
I'm
some.
not. But that's okay.
Well, that might lead
And
people.
I'm toying with the idea of releasing that, but I'm kind of waiting to see if she gets a date.
Right. And I understand that too. It's like, I'll be honest with you, I've got some letters from Darlie that when I used to write back and forth to her, and I've been hanging on to them too for that same reason. Because if that's it'll be a money maker. I mean, it's just, I can't, there's no other way around that. That'll be a money maker. And it would be if she got executed, if they give her a date to put that re-release out, you know, uh, I mean, you're a writer. You don't do this for free, and you put
No,
your hard work and your time into that. You know, some of your other
that would
books.
kill me. I usually take about 6 months to write a book, and my editor wanted that one done in 6 weeks, and I got it done in 10 weeks.
Well, you did a good job on it, because I read it. I read it years ago, and then I've been going back to it since we talked. And there's a lot of detail. There's a lot. I mean, if you have a way of, what my favorite writer is Stephen King. And when you read anything that King does, it's like he's sitting there talking to you. You know what I mean? It's like you're having a
Right.
conversation with him. And this is the same way. I've got a copy of your book right here in front of us. You know all the names like Randy Reagan, which is Darren's cousin. He 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 uh he did a video where he went back through the house after the after the crime, and it was all tore up and the blood was still there. He was one of the ones that carried Darren out of there. But you've got so much detail in this book that anybody who wants to know the case or learn the case, they can learn it from your book. You're not missing anything except you didn't know about the insurance scam, but that came out after you wrote the book,
Yeah.
and you can see the affidavit of Darren Routier online if you're ever interested. But that was done during appeals time. He's been covering for her. It makes us wonder, did he run that sock down there for her? It really does, you know. So
Well, I wouldn't doubt it.
yeah. Well, the detectives kept saying said that Detective Grant Jack said that night that Darren sat on the curb for about 30 minutes because they wouldn't let him in the ambulance. And he came up to Darren and asked him, are you okay? Are everything all right? He said, man, this has got to be the biggest thing that's hit Rowlett. And he,
Right.
he keeps on mentioning Darlie's boobs. He did it on Lisa's show. He did it to the officer there, Jimmy Patterson. Uh, and there's times on these shows where he says, all I could hear was her saying, Devin, 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 Devin. And then there's other times when he says, all I could hear her saying is Darren, 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 Darren. And I've take those clips and I present them. I'm like, these people they just don't want Darlie to die. And I understand that 100%. I feel sorry for them because they just don't want her to die. But when they come out and lie about the case, to me personally, they're disrespecting Devin and Damon. And that's just been my goal on social media when I did other true crime cases I did Chris Watts and Hannah Overton and David Cam and Cooper Harris, but this one sticks with me the most because they're still out there today saying she's innocent. And you from sitting in the courtroom, you know she's guilty. You explained it perfectly. You said they went over all the evidence and everything, and Barb Davis felt like she was guilty until she got threatened to sue her. I don't know if
Well,
she.
the jury didn't have any question about it either. In fact, they they would have come right back with a guilty verdict, but they wanted to have lunch first.
Yeah,
So
I
they
heard.
went to lunch and then they came back.
Now was now this there's a theory out there or a story out there that at first there were four people on the jury that felt like she was innocent, and the judge told them to go back. Did you see anything like that?
No, they never sent anything out telling the judge that they have to send a note out to the judge, and the judge has to tell them to go back because I've covered trials like that,
Right.
and no, that never happened.
Right. Rena Way said the same thing. She said no. She said we had it from the get go. They had a little bit of holdout with Charles Sanford, the older guy, who they had a little bit of holdout with him, but it only took them 4 hours to come out with a unanimous uh, vote. And the only reason Charles Sanford changed his mind, he publicly changed his mind, is because he met Darlie Key. And they gave him that book, Media Tried, Justice Denied. And you know as well as I know that it's full of discrepancies and full of Photoshop pictures from a magazine editor. That Chris Brown that we were talking about.
Yeah,
Even Darlie's lawyer doesn't like him. But he
anybody that likes him.
well he's a part of he's sort of connected to the family because Dana Routier is married to Darren's brother. And she's actually Dana Brown, which is family to Chris Brown. And see, a lot of people didn't know that when they're watching that. He did an episode on the Lisa show, and he's saying this, and it's all crap. And he was just trying to make some money off of throwing something out really quick that was
Did
pure
you
fiction.
ever read Chris Brown's book?
I've seen excerpts. I don't have a copy, but I've seen there.
It's
I've
the most poorly written thing,
right,
and it's in both red ink and black ink, and the red ink is what he surmises really happened, and then the black ink is kind of what happened. And but in there, because I'm short and stout, and in there he called me a weeble wobble.
See, I did. See, that book is hard. Well, it's expensive because they say that there was a warehouse fire, burn up so many copies of it, blah blah blah. But
Well, it's self-published. I bet you there wasn't very many made.
well, now we can't. I haven't seen one for less than like $200. But years ago, Darlie Key had copies of that. And it's got pictures of her grandkids in it that and the way they found them, and she was selling autographed copies of it. And I'm like, wow, how can you do that? You
Well,
know,
because she can do anything. She's. They have no sense of decorum. They have no sense of what's right and wrong. They're all. I'm not going to go that far to say.
well, they absolutely hate my guts. I mean, they put out petitions to get me off social media. They've tried to say that I harassed them, and to them, being harassed is if they put out a lie and you dig up the truth and you put the truth up there, that's harassment to them.
Yeah.
But when she accused me, Danelle accused me of molesting my kids not two
Oh
months ago,
Lord.
and my daughter heard that and she came in and she said, "You're disgusting." But that's why they don't like me, is because I've been very, very outspoken as far as the truth in this case. Ever since, when I mean, I'll be honest, when she stated publicly that that was my fingerprint, I said, "Oh, you just created a monster." I said, "Not only am I going to prove that I didn't have anything to do with it, but I'm going to prove that your daughter did it." And I research, and I don't want to put anything out there that isn't true. I mean, or I don't want to speculate on the case. I don't want to do that. That's not fair to them. It really isn't not fair to them. So I'm so glad you talked to me. We didn't know how this was going to go, but it's just going like a phone
I
conversation.
didn't say much. You know it all.
Well,
You know the case, and you know things I didn't know at the time. Like I said, I wrote it 10 weeks. It
well,
came out. I sent it to my publisher 10 weeks after the trial.
Well, it's really well written, and but you sat in that courtroom, so that's the difference. You heard all that, and I know it's been years. I know it's been a lot of years, but I mean, I wish I was been able to be there. And now in your person,
Very interesting.
I bet it was. I mean, I like the way that Greg Davis tore Darren up on the stand. He tore him up, caught
Oh
him
yeah.
lying. And I liked his opening. His opening was. They say, well, they only charged him with Damon's crime because they didn't have enough evidence to get him for Devon. I'm like, no, you don't know anything about law. First of all, for Damon, they could got the death penalty. For Devon, they'd only got a life sentence. And
Right.
they were saying they didn't have enough evidence. Well, if they have enough evidence for Damon, then they'd have enough evidence for Devon because he was laying next to him. I mean, that's all there is to
Yeah,
that.
that's ridiculous. Well, they just spout off the top of their head. They don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, on Thanksgiving, I sent him. I called Greg Davis' house, and he didn't answer. But I told him, on behalf of Devin and Damon and the members of Justice for Devin and Damon on Facebook, we just want to thank you for your hard work on securing that conviction for on Darlie. He did. He got back with me, and I tried to get him to go into the case, which is what you do. I'm kind of a light, like a armchair investigator, and I tried to get him to go into the case, and he said, "Well, it's under appeal, and I can't go into it." And I was thinking to myself, "Well, you're on all these damn shows, you talk about it there," but I didn't want to push him, because I know he had a hard job to do with a lot of that evidence being circumstantial evidence. But what people don't understand is circumstantial evidence is evidence, especially when you have some direct evidence to back it up with, like the serrated knife with the fiber from the screen in it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what's somebody gonna do? Break in your house, steal a knife, cut the screen, then come back in there? That fight.
Yeah. Everything that I mean, they can't. Key routiers, all those people. They can say that it was all wrong, but there's just too much. It was overwhelming evidence.
It was overwhelming evidence, and they're fighting for her. They say that we're afraid that she's going to get a new trial. We're scared of that. No, we're not. Go for it. Greg Davis said he'd come out of retirement for that one.
Yeah.
And if she was,
Toby probably would, well, Toby's in private practice, but
yeah,
he
Toby,
probably joined.
yeah, Toby's a great guy. He had the, I think it was Amber Geiger case. He's a defense attorney
Yeah,
for her,
yeah.
and I love the way he speaks. You know, they were trying to say years ago that Darlie was offered a deal from the state that if she would just, confess to the crime, that they would reduce her sentence to a life sentence. And I called Toby. And I said, "Come on, Toby, is this true?" And he said, "No, Darlie, Darlie Routier was never a offer her a life sentence. No, you know,
That that case was so appalling to them. I mean, two young boys just slaughtered, and there's no way that they were going to deal with her.
no." And they were perfectly blunt about her. When they asked Toby on one show, "What do you think of Darlie Routier? What do you think?" He said, "Well, she's a psychopath. She's
Yeah.
materialistic." And as a supporter, when I was writing to her, Darlie is very charming. I mean, she's had three different men try to marry her since she's been in there, and she is very charming. Now, a lot of people say,
Understanding she was also, it was my understanding that she was also became friends with Susan Smith, but then they have that in common. They kill their kids.
well, I don't know how she can become friends with Susan Smith because Susan Smith is in South Carolina. Isn't that correct?
They write to each other.
Oh, they might. And do you know who Melissa Lucio
That's
is?
my understanding that they do
Do you know who?
or did.
Do you know who
They did.
Melissa?
She's another one that
You
you
know,
know.
yeah. Well, Darlie Key came out on the news and said my daughter's not isn't no smooth Susan Smith, and I clapped back at her one time. I said, I know she's nothing like Susan Smith. Susan Smith actually grew a conscience and confessed.
Yeah.
Now you know who Melissa Lucio is?
Name's familiar, but I don't remember.
She's on death row, and Darlie hooked her up with the Innocence Project, and Melissa Lucio is about to be released because she's actually not guilty. She's going to get
Oh,
released.
that's
Yeah, she's going to get released. So the supporters are coming out and say, Darlie saved her life. Darlie saved her life. Oh, she didn't. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeals is saving her life. The CIU
yeah,
is saving her life because there's there's evidence to prove that she didn't hurt that baby. And I believe she deserves to be out. And some of the
yeah,
non-supporters I speak with, they don't agree with me on it. I agree, like the Menendez brothers right now. I agree that 35 years is enough. And in that second trial, they would not let them present any evidence of abuse. And I don't think they got a fair trial in that second trial. So I think 35 years is enough. We should let them out. A lot of people don't agree with me on that. And that's okay. That's okay if they don't agree with me. I don't get too mad about it. Well, you've given me more than an hour of your time, Patricia. I really appreciate it.
I don't feel like I gave you much information.
Well, you gave me a little bit of insight, and it's like I said, it's nice to be able to talk to some people that were there. You gave me insight, and I'm going to share it. And people are going to be interested. I'm going to lead them to your other books, so that if they like what you have to say in Flesh and Blood, they'll like what you had to say in your other books. I'm going to take a look at some of them myself. And again, I appreciate your time. I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. Thank,
Okay.
thank you
Thank
very.
you. Bye
Yeah,
bye.
bye.